If you run these reports and you run these segments and you see that you have a really huge number of Apple users, then these are some of the things that you're going to have to consider. If you have a smaller list of Apple users, then maybe you don't have to worry about it as much.
They're getting between 30% and 50% open rates. What that's telling me is that they're not sending enough emails.
Ever wonder how the e-commerce brands you admire do it? How they just know the right message to send to the right people at the right time? Guess what? It's not experience. They have the right data and the right tools. They have Klaviyo. Klaviyo's data-driven marketing automation platform is sophisticated enough to power those legendary campaigns from the brands you admire, but they made it simple, easy, and fast enough for anyone to use. Klaviyo helps brands easily create personalized, multi-channel marketing campaigns using the most powerful asset, your customers' data. Klaviyo integrates with all leading e-commerce platforms, helping you use your customer data in real time to send more relevant email and SMS automations. Plus, building a marketing campaign is drag and drop easy. You can get started with your first campaign in under an hour and easily build from there with Klaviyo's best performing templates. Klaviyo gives you all the power of an enterprise marketing automation platform and none of the complexity, so you can compete with the big guys. No wonder more than 65,000 brands can't get enough. To get started with your free trial of Klaviyo, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored.
You're listening to E-Commerce Uncensored with Kevin Manel and Jason Caruso.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us on another episode of E-Commerce Uncensored. My name is Kevin Manel, and I'm here with
Jason Caruso.
Now, if you listened to our podcast in the past, you know that we are very big on email. And not only email, we're big on reading the numbers and the data in email to really identify what things are working and what aren't working. And, we talked about cleaning our list a couple weeks ago, and we decided to come on here and discuss these latest iOS 15 Apple updates that are coming out, or that have come out already. Actually, about a week ago, I think they came out, and it goes in line with their continuing concept of privacy settings and things like that. iOS 14 started to block Facebook ads and tracking all the events that are happening in Facebook, so that was a big deal. And now,
are they blocking the ads or just not reporting back?
It's not on the iOS 14 stuff you're talking about. Yeah, It's just not, all the events aren't trackable. The purchase events, landing page views, and if you go into your ad manager now, you'll see a little note on each number that says this might not be accurate due to the iOS 14 app or update. So it's getting more and more difficult to optimize the ads for that, just because it can't track everything.
Yeah. It's interesting, Kevin, because we, for sure, maybe I didn't think about this, but now that Klaviyo is saying that this is a problem with the iOS 15 update, 14, Facebook was having an issue with, and now Klaviyo is saying that there's issues tracking with iOS 15. And I don't think I've ever consciously thought like, hey, it's going to get to email. But now that Klaviyo is saying it, it makes sense. Like, okay, and first Facebook. And what's really interesting about this is that if you're a marketer or you run a business and you've been on Facebook or you scroll on Facebook like most of us do, this is like the big thing right now is like, are Facebook ads still working? Is this iOS thing, did they kill Facebook? Whatever. And it's kind of like all over the place, and people are constantly saying how Facebook is dead and Facebook ads are dead and yada yada yada. But what's interesting about this is that several podcasts episodes ago, I don't remember which one it was, it could have even been like a year or two ago, we talked about the importance of looking at your business and your media buying and your results sort of more holistically, right? Like, and I'm sure like there were people listening to this and, saying like, oh, these guys don't know what the hell they're talking about. We have to attribute sales and spend to Facebook and this and that and yada, yada, yada. But now I think, Kevin, a year or two later from whenever we said that, I think we look more and more like we knew what we were talking about, because
Weird.
the truth is you can't look any longer at Facebook and say, okay, I spent $10,000 on Facebook, I got back $20,000. It's a lot harder to do that. And in fact, you're not really getting the right data. So what we said on this podcast was like, look, we don't necessarily look at how Facebook's doing. We don't necessarily look at how YouTube is doing or Google is doing. What we tend to do is look at it all as one. Like, okay, we spent $100,000 this month on our media buying, and we got back $200,000, right? It in some ways, Kev, it's simplified it a little bit.
Well, if you think about it, it's like now I'm going to say traditional advertising is now social media and podcasts and things like that. But if you look, at older traditional advertising like TV and radio, there was no real way to totally track what you're getting back in return from a TV commercial necessarily.
Well, the
or
only
a
way you could do
radio
it is with
commercial.
like a coupon code.
Yeah, we could do that. But like,
But if people didn't use it, right?
big brands, Coca-Cola, Apple, like they put their brand out there on TV commercials. There's no way for them to actually track back to a specific commercial at a specific time that had an impact on their business. They look at it just like, as you said, as a media buying marketing plan as a whole. And I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, because we've gotten into this performance marketing. Like everything now is like performance-based marketing. Like, okay, we put in $1, we got back $2, and yada yada yada. And that stuff all is what social media did. Having all that data. But basically, all that's happened is like, you're right. Now social media is going to be similar, not the same because you do get some data, but similar to running radio ads or similar to running TV ads, right? Like, you have to look at it holistically, like what went out and what came in. And it's interesting because we have an email list of about 70,000 people, 60. I don't know the exact number, but email is what really has always made our outreach profitable, right? Like even if we got like a 1x return on Facebook, email would be 5x or 10x or whatever. So it always was there kind of just to make sure everything was profitable. And I think that this is just more of that, right? Like more of attributing all of your outreach to one bucket and all of your revenue from the outreach in another bucket, and then seeing if it works. And as much as I hate to not see the data in Facebook, I think it could free people like us up a little bit. It's going to be harder to interact with clients because it's going to be harder to get them the data that they're asking for. But I think for us, who like to keep our businesses very simple, I think it could be something of benefit.
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about it when it comes to these privacy setting things that are happening. Like you said, like that's the rage now. Everybody wants to have privacy. Everybody cares about that stuff. But I don't know how you feel. And I don't know if it's because I'm in the marketing space and this is what I do. And I've said this before, is like, I don't mind that Facebook knows what I'm doing. And I don't mind that like an email provider knows what I'm doing. Like I like getting tailored messaging. Like I feel like Facebook is better for me if it knows what I'm doing. And I know like you tell people who aren't really in the space that like, yeah, we're following. That's what we do. We follow you around. I went and looked at shoes over here and now I'm on Facebook and I'm getting, shoe ads. Like that's scary to me. How do they know all this? How are they getting all this? Like, I get that, But for me, I'm like, I'm cool. Like I'm looking for a wallet, and I find like I get 7 different kinds of wallets that I want to check out. And that's kind of how I found my wallet that I love. I like that, even though I'm on someone's email list that I don't open all the time, maybe I'm going to get some tailored messaging because I haven't engaged with them as much in the past. Like I like that. I feel like it's a really good for me shopping experience. How do you as a consumer step away from marketing for a second? How do you feel about that as a consumer, Jason?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to hide, so I don't really get the whole privacy thing. I mean, I know some people go crazy over it, but at the end of the day, if somebody wants to know something about you, they'll figure it out, and just setting some settings in your phone, to me, it's they're still gonna kind of know, I
Yeah.
think. But no, I'm like you. I like, I do like the idea of seeing stuff that I care about. Like I don't want to see like earrings because I don't have my ears pierced anymore. I don't want to, I don't want to see that kind of stuff, you know. But so yeah, I agree. Now, even though I agree with you, for some reason, when the stupid thing pops up on my phone, I always say don't follow. I don't know why. I don't know. It's just,
Or
but
like when you're setting something up and they're like, would you like Apple to diagnose? Would you
yeah,
like us to
never.
send diagnosis to Apple or
Yeah.
something? I always say no. They're like,
Yeah, because
screw you.
they don't ever get back to me and say, "Oh, thank you. Look, we're looking into this."
Right. I mean, it just makes for. I feel like I'm getting all my options, and and I think part of it is obviously that I'm in the space and it's something I do, and I like seeing people's ads and seeing what people are doing and how they're retargeting me and things like that. But I don't know. It's just it makes sense to me as an online shopper to do that now. So are you? I just wanted to. I wanted to just talk about this Apple iOS 15 change that's coming out. So what's actually happening is on iOS 15 for your phone, Mac iOS Monterey, iPad iOS 15, and the Watch 8 will have the ability to. You can then hide the fact that you open an email. Like it won't send data to the email provider that you've opened an email. It will hide, specific information about yourself, like your location and all this stuff you can opt in and opt out of on the phone itself. But it's going to block this activity when you're using your Apple Mail or your Apple iOS Mail, and it's not going to send that data. So email marketers are not going to be able to track that kind of information.
It's interesting because I'm sure Apple's still tracking you, right? Like they know where you are, but they don't want anybody else to know where you are, right? Like I'm wondering like what the effect on like these local businesses are going to have, because local businesses run ads to people that are in like a zip code or just visiting wherever, right? Like you can run local ads or you can run ads to people who are visiting certain places. So that's going to be interesting. But I do a lot of studying on email marketers and email marketing, and it's funny because we look at our stats in Klaviyo and we just tend to trust them, right? But this guy Ben Settle, who is like this copywriter, he always says, he's like, I don't understand what people's infatuation with opening or open rates are. He's like, I just look at how many sales I make. I don't really care like who opens how many people open the email. It doesn't really tell me anything. He says, because even before this update to Apple, what his argument is that the data still isn't perfect, right? Like you can open it in a lot of different ways. And then, so like his point is like, and I agree with him. Like I've always felt like, our clients ask us all the time, like, what's the open rates for the emails? Like, what does that matter? Like, I don't understand. Like, don't you want to just sell stuff?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because remember that we had a client like 6 months or so ago, or maybe even a year ago now. Jesus. And we would send an email out, and the open rates were so high, and we knew that their email, they weren't that engaged via email. Their click through rate, I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but the click through rates were through the roof. And come to find out that there was tools out there, that these people had these tools on their, these were B2B. This was a B2B client. So these companies,
Enterprise servers
yeah,
were
they had this like spam filter that would open the emails, check the links, make sure there was no malware or any suspicious activity, and then send it to the person's inbox.
so they would click it.
Yeah,
Like
all that bot activity was sending all this false data to Klaviyo. So even like you said, even before this update, it was happening. It's like, I mean, you can only rely on it to a certain extent, but if you see these inflated numbers and stuff, something's going on.
yeah, I mean, the other thing I think that this does for our industry is it actually makes email more important, right? Because so we have this golf ad that when we turn on just blows up, right?
Yeah.
We don't really have anything to sell, so like that's the problem. But like we have this ad that just works like crazy, right? And the we don't quite know like how everything, I guess my point is like we're getting people to sign up to our email list, so we're doing lead gen, and we don't necessarily have to rely on Facebook's reporting to know how it's working, because we just look at so it's like really easy. We just, how many people signed up, how much money did we spend, and we could do the math that way. We don't really need Facebook. Where to me that makes it just that much more important, because now instead of trying to make sales on Facebook, we can just try to grow our email list and sell people through the back end.
Yeah. And I think this pushes us and pushes email marketers to focus a lot more on, maybe some next level engagement aside from open rates. Like we've used open rates as a metric to, identify if things are working, people are actually seeing our messaging. But really now you have to focus on that engagement. Are people clicking through? And speaking of specifically for Klaviyo, because we use Klaviyo, we're talking about Klaviyo. And so I don't necessarily, I haven't used MailChimp in years. I haven't used Active Campaign in years. There's all these other ones out there that I haven't used. So I don't know how they're handling it all. But I know that Klaviyo is really pushing people to look at that, click-through rate more strongly, because that is still going to be a metric that's going to be trackable. And they are also putting out, they have a reporting tool and a segmentation setting that you can actually see all your Apple users. So you can start sending your Apple users segmented email. If you have a huge list of people who are using Apple, you could just send to them and see how it's affected.
Right. So basically what Klaviyo is said to do is create a segment of Apple users and then email them separately. Right. So maybe everybody who is opening on an Apple device, they go in one segment. Everybody opening in all the other devices, they go in another segment, and then you can kind of see from there. I don't know if this is going to bleed over into Android. I don't know that Android has as much of a like chokehold, so to speak, on, because there's a lot of different platforms that are using the Android network, between like, you got Apple TVs using it, Fire Sticks, you have phones. I mean, there's like a lot of different devices.
Yeah, it's funny because I think you told me it's like Android is like huge, like even
way bigger than Apple.
Way bigger, right? And it just seems like Apple's the one that's always got the light shined on it, basically. And Android's kind of like, I'm just gonna sit back over here and maybe no one will shine the light on me, and they're just kind of skating by.
Yeah, I think because our industry is quote unquote Apple people for the most part, I think. Although, I mean, our wildlife photography brand, there's a ton of Apple people in there. I mean, then they're artists, so that may make sense as well.
Ever wonder how the e-commerce brands you admire do it? How they just know the right message to send to the right people at the right time? Guess what? It's not experience. They have the right data and the right tools. They have Klaviyo. Klaviyo's data-driven marketing automation platform is sophisticated enough to power those legendary campaigns from the brands you admire, but they made it simple, easy, and fast enough for anyone to use. Klaviyo helps brands easily create personalized, multi-channel marketing campaigns using the most powerful asset, your customers' data. Klaviyo integrates with all leading e-commerce platforms, helping you use your customer data in real time to send more relevant email and SMS automations. Plus, building a marketing campaign is drag and drop easy. You can get started with your first campaign in under an hour and easily build from there with Klaviyo's best performing templates. Klaviyo gives you all the power of an enterprise marketing automation platform and none of the complexity, so you can compete with the big guys. No wonder more than 65,000 brands can't get enough. To get started with your free trial of Klaviyo, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored. Yeah, I mean, there are some things that I'm just looking through this article that Klaviyo put out, and a couple weeks ago we talked about cleaning your list, and now it's always a good time to like take a look at that. But we also talked about like looking at engagement as like an open, like, and you really can't, if you run these reports and you run these segments and you see that you have a really huge number of Apple users, then these are some of the things that you're going to have to consider. If you have a smaller list of Apple users, then maybe you don't have to worry about it as much. But like when you're doing, say, you're cleaning out your list and you're looking at people who haven't opened your email in 90 days or 60 days or 30 days or whatever, you're going to have to rethink that a little bit, because those metrics aren't going to be accurate. You may have somebody who's opening your email on an Apple device, and you're not going to be able to see that. And so you're going to have to gauge it more on a higher level of engagement for them.
Yeah, and that's interesting because cleaning your list is going to be tougher.
Yeah.
It's going to be harder. Like, you're not going to really know. You're not really going to know who opened and who didn't. So if like you're trying to clean the list because they were inactive for 6 months, they may not be
right,
inactive.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's other ways you can do it. You can take those email addresses and see if they've purchased or anything. You can kind of segment those people and then see, because they do see the device that it was opened on.
They
right?
still
They
do.
just, well, how would you segment
Well,
Apple
I
users?
think they're looking at, you have to look at previous, like at this point, you'd have to look at the previous 30 days when you were able to track. Moving forward, I don't know. Now that you say that, like moving forward, that segment's not going to be accurate either. That number of people who are Apple users is not going to be accurate unless they've clicked. Now, another thing that Klaviyo has done is they've given you the ability to, because right now your settings, your default settings in Klaviyo are the attribution of revenue is going to be based on whether they opened or clicked, which is why Klaviyo is saying that your numbers, your open rates are actually going to be inflated a little bit. Like they're going to be higher, as well as your revenue, because it's going to try to, it's got like these, I'm sure these calculations and these algorithms based on the percentage of email users on your platform. And they're actually going to send people like eventually an email that's going to say this percentage of your list is Apple users. So what they're going to try to do is calculate that just based on industry numbers, percentages,
or past,
like that. So
past or history.
It's not like your open rates are going to plummet. They're not going to go down because of this. They're actually could potentially be inflated a little bit and inaccurate, because they're going to try to figure it out without looking at the open rates necessarily.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because I'm writing up a proposal right now for one of our prospects. Nate, if you're listening, what's up, buddy? I'm talking about you. And their open rates are really high, and I'm wondering how much of that has to do with this.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe it started for them already.
I mean, like they're getting between 30% and 50% open rates. Actually, like in the proposal, I wrote that what that's telling me is that they're not sending enough emails, because really like 30 to 50% open rates with with a larger list just means that you're not sending enough emails so because we've never, I mean, it doesn't matter who we like, clients of ours that had over 100,000 people on their list, our list with 70,000. When you get to these bigger lists, they tend to have much like smaller open rates.
Yeah.
For example,
more normalized open rates, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like we've always said that we thought a 20% open rate for e-commerce for a business who is is using email regularly is a really good open rate. 20% is a really good open rate.
Mm-hmm.
When we start seeing 30% and 50%, they're just not sending enough emails,
Right.
and we've seen that with everybody, with every one of our clients. When they're not sending enough emails, they get these big open rates. Well, yeah, I mean, you're only sending an email every once in a while, so that makes sense. But when you're sending emails, for us, email, I mean, in our opinion, email can literally save your business.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I guess my point is that not to get off topic here, but my point is that open rates really are not that important. I guess really what it comes down to.
Yeah. So along with those,
I'm stuttering a little bit there, Kev.
It's all good, man.
Kind of thinking about.
Yeah, I know there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot to think about here, and there's a lot. It affects your business tremendously when you're looking at it a certain way. And these open rates are going to be inflated in turn, based on these percentages that Klaviyo is going to do. And I'm sure the other email providers are going to do similar things, so you don't start seeing just a dive bomb of open rates. I'm sure they're going to want to, because you look at that pretty number, and you're going to start questioning your email provider. So those providers are going to want to keep those numbers up. So they're going to try to, I guess, try to figure out what that number is. So with the open rates inflating, so is your revenue is going to inflate, because your attribution is based on the open rate. So what Klaviyo has done is they've added click only attribution. I don't know if you read that part of the article, but you can actually go into your settings now, and it's only going to attribute a sale or revenue if someone clicks, if you have that setting. So a campaign could get attributed with a sale, even though someone didn't necessarily open their email. But if you have click, they would have to click through the email for that.
But can they track that sale back to that person? I think that's the problem.
If it's a click, if they click through, but say I am on an Apple.
You can't buy unless you click through them.
You could. I mean, why couldn't I? I can open an email, and then I can go type in their web address, or I can see them on Facebook later on. There's so many attribution issues to talk about, with these different channels going on anyway. But totally, you can open an email, and then one of our clients, they open the email and then they call an order.
Yeah,
that's
that's an older crowd,
anyway. Right?
Well, that's an older crowd, and they want to talk to someone. But I guess the moral of this story is that, for me personally, I think it's going to make things for the good marketers, the people who know what they're doing. I feel like they're going to be fine. I feel like it's the people who, you see it on Facebook all the time. They worry about things that I used to worry about, quite frankly, before I really understood. Before we started making all this money with our own business on Facebook, I worried about the stupid things,
Yeah.
And you just see these other marketers who have money, they're just doubling down, and what they're doing is they're taking up, because they realize that, and this is another thing, not to get off topic here, but if you talk to a really experienced marketer, they'll tell you that they don't ever use social media as a quote unquote selling channel. They use it more to just get attention, right? They're just trying to get attention. They're not necessarily relying on Facebook, because Facebook at the end of the day doesn't make the sale. And that's where I think people get screwed up with this. It's not Facebook making the sale. It's how you're presenting your offer. It's if you're going after the right crowd. It's if, you have something that people want, and people have always attributed their sales to Facebook, and it's not Facebook. And that's why when I created the Truth About Facebook ads, it has really very little to do about Facebook. It's all about how to create an offer. It's all about how to do these things that won't be affected, because you can see the sales coming into your store.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's just my take on it.
No, totally. You're absolutely right. So guys, keep an eye on it. Make sure you're looking at how this is affecting yourself.
And look at look at things from a holistic standpoint. Don't look at things so granular anymore. You really have to see what's coming into the business and compare it to what's going out of the business. And I think, the more you realize that your sales are directly, like they're directly they're a direct, like, it depends. What I'm trying to say, it's not the platform. It's like the correlation is
Right.
your product, how good it is, how well you could sell it, how good your sales page is. It's not so much Facebook. It's not so much email. It's not so much these things. It's basically you're using these platforms to get your message out there, to get your brand out there. It's not so much, Facebook doing it or email. So
Right on.
I wouldn't get too excited about it. I know it's going to be hard to report to clients, but other than that, I think the good people will still succeed.
Cool, man.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you can check us out at ecommerceuncensored.com. And we'll talk to you guys real soon.
Later.
Attention e-commerce founders, entrepreneurs, side hustlers, marketers, and growth hackers. If you're working round the clock to build your dream e-commerce business, you need an e-commerce marketing platform that works just as hard as you do. That means you need Klaviyo. With Klaviyo, you'll delight customers and drive revenue at the same time, with personalized emails and SMS marketing campaigns that you can design and send in minutes. For more, visit klaviyo.com/uncensored. That's KLAVIYO.com/uncensored.